G'day friends and fans, and welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 28th of July 2025. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Pearl Games, Into the Osbound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire, Part 1 available now. All my books available on Amazon. Thank you to all those who support the channel. You can support the channel by buying my books, buying my merch, and joining my patrons. All my links are in the link tree. Handy little website, not sponsored. Moving on. Alright. As you know, the YouTube algorithm has allegedly changed, so without your engagement, your views no longer allegedly count. Unless you're subscribed, allegedly, your views don't count. I have yet to actually put this all to the test, which I don't think there's any way to actually verify what people are claiming. But I often get a newsletter that says, more engagement. So, engagement, I must ask. What that is? Like, share, subscribe, comment. It's nice to have the YouTube channel back, but it's a burden, and I would rather see my Rumble grow, but Rumble viewers seem to be a very fickle beast who it's almost harder to get. It's asking people to subscribe is like pulling teeth already, but Rumble viewers, man. Yeah, I hate being a slave to the algorithm. I really think that, there's no organic growth. We've just got to keep grinding. I know. Most people don't talk about the back end. I know. Ukraine war has escalated. Now, on the Russian side, of course, we're going to see more drones, more missiles. On the Ukrainian side, we're going to see more whining. Yeah, they're not doing well. You could tell how well they're not doing by the lack of news. But we do know that Ukrainians are mad at Zelensky. I mean, look at the level of production and propaganda they put into this man. Is anybody surprised he's a fake, phony, corrupt bureaucrat? A petty-minded tyrant? You shouldn't be. Of course, Liberals take out their frustrations on Trump, blaming him. Of course, it's never their fault. So what we have is a fire without context, the usual round of drones hitting civilian targets, back to their old propaganda, back to their old Russia only attacks civilian targets. Every drone Russia fires is shot down. Over 500 were fired at Russia in the last 24 hours, mostly in the last 4. They didn't say how many missiles, but there was probably a few in there. Ursula von der Leyen went to Trump and later actually spoke about the corruption in Ukraine, indirectly, just basically the need for anti-corruption bodies more than ever, and the work is far from complete. You know the usual. Get your house in order. Yeah, this is Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen just told Ukraine to clean the house. Clean your room. Clean your room. So all those who criticise Jordan Peterson, he's absolutely right. But this Ukraine has already achieved a lot. It's just you're a good little Zelensky, but you've got more to do. So obviously they're happy that he's throwing some people under a bus, But she's driving that bus and she wants to back up over some more, because, when it comes to corrupt bureaucracies, they only like it when you fall in line and only take a little bit. You can't be too obvious. Your corruption has to be long-term. You have to be a Macron or a Ursula to really get away with stuff. But as I said, the map will turn red. And the usual targets of Kiev, the industrial centres, military bases, airports, but almost daily drone attacks in Zaporozhye by the missiles in Sumy for some reason. Fighting and artillery. They are slowly expanding the buffer zone, but most of the border unmoved, but there is activity. Activity on the front line, no real progress. But as I said, they're getting ready. Pushing up, put this one tank battle rare. An armoured push towards Seversk. As I said, they would need to smash this to get to the main Kremlin. They have to smash through a lot. But they are smashing, and they are smashing through a lot. It's just that when it comes to fighting a war on multiple fronts, 3 seems to be a little too far. They're doing fine on 2, but 3, yeah. But remember, just because the other fronts aren't as successful doesn't mean they're important. They're keeping a lot of Ukrainians out of the fight. So while there's not much north of Chasiv going on, south of Chasiv, the push to Krominskaya is continuing with attempts to crush what's left of the Ukrainian forces here, securing this road here to cut off reinforcements, and the push here to bring up artillery onto this. Oddly enough, they still haven't. I reckon they're going to bulge out, probably somewhere around here, to bring up artillery so they can pound all of this as they see fit. And to do such, they have advanced. They've taken Novotrodinski and another town, Blyanovka, down. Yeah, they've taken another town here. But that's not all. They have most of this area. As I said, they're going around. Did I not say to go around and cut off the road? Force the Ukrainian. They don't want the Ukrainians to be reinforced. They want to force them out through here. Because they know they're gathering up here to try and stop this push. The clashes, most of them, I think, as the Russians advance, will start pouring into these towns. I don't know yet. The Ukrainians may make a stand here. We'll see. So far, we haven't seen any blue appear on the map. But it's either reinforcements into Pavlovsk, Volodensky, but Volodensky and Bladinsky should be I mean, alright, so not much else is happening. Like I said, finishing this off, cutting off Ukrainians. They'll seal this when they're, once they've, this is low priority. This is a higher priority. This corner, stop Ukrainians coming into here, forcing them up onto this road, which puts them under artillery fire from here. This helps bring up. It's more about protecting the flanks while they grind this. And they are grinding it. You can see they're clashing in the outskirts. You can see they're hitting this hard. They're in the town. They're on the edge. They have advanced. And again, this is a buffer zone to stop Ukrainians coming up into the what would you call it, mortar range of the big guns, mobile, what's it called, self-propelled artillery. It's hard to say, but yeah, these farm roads, even up here, they are, perfect for, most of this soil is going to be turnover, but this line, once they come up through here, they will pound all of this into, they'll crush it. It's a matter of how many days or weeks it takes for Russia to stockpile its munitions for the big push, and the same, how much they can reduce the stockpile of munitions for the Ukrainians coming through, probably somewhere through here, coming up through here. Nothing else. Nothing at Kremensky Bridge. I call it the cursed bridge. I know it's the Kremensky Bridge. This is okay. There's two parts to it, but it is a continuous structure. This is the part that comes under attack most often. Now there's a ferry out of Kursk to the port here. And there's Russian warships and helicopters and boats all through here now. So the other day there was a huge drone wave. It actually went over Crimea. Very odd that they would let it get so far, but just the way it is, I guess. It's the way they call it. May not make sense, but I think because they were drones, they didn't use anything long range on them. Now, a short time ago, Russia started a intense battle at Dmitrov. I don't exactly know where this is on the map. Sorry, it doesn't leap out at me. Does it leap out at you? It doesn't leap out at me. But it also could be because it's the Russian name, not the Ukrainian name. And sometimes when you look these up, it still don't make sense because they only give you a tiny patch. But you can see there is a lot of fighting along this. But this, this is where I think we're going to see heavy fighting right through the week. This, of course, is probably just about battlefield initiative. That if how much of DPR can the Russians grab before, and they've advanced Krasny-Lyman. So that's here. So somewhere in here are battles that the Russians are pushing. This is the third offensive. So, like I said, the two offensives they've got, they're doing fine. The third offensive towards Lyman is actually one of their first, but it's pretty slow. But never underestimate Russian strategy. Do not mistake slow for Ukrainian success. Rather, it's a trap to draw in Ukrainians. According to Steve Gill, without European coalition of the winning, even with the coalition of the winning, Kiev is still unraveling. Zelensky's lost control of the domestic situation. He's already 30,000 troops behind this month. And you add to that last 2 months that he was behind. By next month, he'll be somewhere in the vicinity of 2-1 on the battlefield. And by the end of the year, he'll be outnumbered 3-1. And this is without Russia increasing its troops, only maintaining its troop readiness and supply. The continued progress of Russia in the battlefield, the slipping grasp of power of Zelensky, and Trump's desire to end the war with a long-term solution has all put pressure on Zelensky. They can't cut corners. They cannot run the clock out on this. They cannot force Trump into war. Trump has already said he's going to put pressure on them to end the war. He's asking for an accurate account of money spent. As we know, when the Europeans, particularly Hungary, tried to find out what happened to its money, the 3 Hungarian officials were arrested as spies, later detained and released back to Hungary, but not with their books or notes or allowed to conduct any interviews because it's a state secret. So obviously Zelensky's protecting the corruption, accusing people of being Russian bots. But another prisoner exchange is going ahead, as well as another meeting. The draft memorandum of where and when has already been established. It's another 40-minute meeting. This will be the allegedly... Okay, the first meeting, dead bodies, now live prisoners. The next one should be officials to meet to arrange the Kremlin meeting for Zelensky. Actually, not Kremlin meeting. The meeting with Putin will take place in Ankara. There'll be brief exchange. Then they will go back home. And Putin will call Zelensky names. Zelensky will call Putin names. but someone is going to be rather softer about it, and it's most likely going to be Putin, who will probably hope that Ukrainian Parliament ratifies the treaty put forward by Zelensky, given the situation they find themselves in, and that future parliaments will honour the agreement, unlike previous agreements, pointing to all the agreements that Ukraine has broken before. All of them, by the way. Ukraine has never kept its word since 1935. I forget who said it, but I'm pretty sure Zelensky brought it up during his presidential run initially, that the equivalent of the American dream in Ukraine is to borrow money and never pay it back, and that's why the state bank, they was talking about how the state bank was broken. The Ukraine state bank was bankrupt because people don't repay their loans. State guaranteed debt is over 100 billion and increasing at 4 billion in the span of 1 month. Now, there was some months where that increase was less, like April at only 1 billion. But then there were state and domestic debt guarantees, and they all add up to different amounts. But overall, Ukraine was making 74 billion. They're down to 54 billion. So that's quick look on the calculator. 184 divided by 54. 3.5 times. Ukraine will take 35 years at its current repayment just to repay the debt. Not the interest on the debt. That's another decade or two. This is if they go ahead with the mineral deal. Remember, oversupply of minerals will reduce the price. China is threatening to dump various minerals on the market. They have actually dumped, but threaten to dump more. So if there's development in Ukraine, China could sink the price, further sinking Ukraine's prospects. And then, of course, there's Russia. If Russia's excluded from the market, and it's in Russia's interest to end this war and keep the price of rare earths high. So there has to be a deal. And Trump's tariffs, of course, is the incentive, because once the tariffs go ahead, Putin will take his last year of office, in the current term, as Russia decides, I think obviously if they will have to replace him, because he'll have no option. You can't call Trump's bluff, and I think Putin realizes that, but Putin is trying to please Xi, and remember Xi Jinping holds Russia by the balls. Now, Russia has taken a lot of its autonomy back at the detriment of many businesses. But the Russian economy could have achieved 5.5% growth, but it would have come at the cost of sovereignty. China tried to take over the Russian automobile industry, for instance, which, as you may or may not know, is also their key manufacturer of tanks and trucks for their military. So they told them where to go on that one. But China isn't in a good position and is slowing down on consumption, so Russian exports are slowing down. Another incentive for Putin to end the war sooner rather than later. Now, NATO members obviously have their various reasons why they don't like Ukraine, but Hungary, heart on a sleeve, has laid it out on the table and says, these arseholes treat us like shit, so we want to cut them off. But they can't, because the EU is pressuring them. Right now they have very bad relations, nothing to do with the war. It's all about the Ukrainian government violating the rights of minorities. And they're looking to sanction Ukrainian military officials for their treatment of ethnic minorities. And Hungary is also wants to impose more sanctions on Ukraine. There are actual sanctions on Ukraine right now. I think Poland has a sanction on Ukrainian produce that does not meet EU standards, and border crossings, and particularly Ukrainian workers. They're trying to get them to go back, because once they get into Poland, they don't go back. But there's also questions, a lot of Ukrainians are saying how the state, when they leave, the state takes everything. And if they go back, they're going to either have to go to jail or be mobilised. And they're now mobilising women into non-combat roles, but they're still mobilising women to try and beef their logistics. Now, for now, Russia is winning the laser war. While US and European allies still dream about laser weapons, get to that in a moment. Unlike kinetic weapons, lasers do not require reloading, only a power source. We know this, and they have a better rate of fire, much better rate. They have twice the rate of fire of most advanced anti-missile systems. They could shoot down far more missiles per minute in some cases, mostly small, but on average it's about 8. The reality is, however, US and Europe did have laser weaponry. German had, was it the Lance? Anyway, they had a laser weapon, and a powerful one of the most powerful in the world. What happened to it? Well, it broke down. And Germany was unable to fix it because the company that was producing the optics went broke. This is the problem when you have a company so specialized, and the state sacrifices that specialized company in order to save money to house migrants in hotels instead. Because humanity, comrades. So you go backwards for backward people invading your country. You know, people with Independence Day shouldn't be allowed to migrate to other countries. Full stop. Fuck off, India. Go home. Same with Syria. Same with Lebanon. So all of them. They're hypocrites. Always whining about colonialism, and then they go to other countries. Fuck them. Alright, so Europe was on the verge of developing laser weapons, and they fucked themselves. Now the US has laser weapons. They have one on the US Gerald Ford. I believe they have one on a test facility. I think it's called Johnson Island. Not sure if it's the actual name of the island or the facility. I think they also have one in the Pacific at the Hawaiian missile range. They have 2 airborne laser systems. I think one at Andrews, reportedly, and another big boy at I think, the one in the Colorado, basically. Now the other is the test system. The test system they have in Alaska, allegedly. But there are different reports. But the reason why the US is so behind is because in 2014, your God Emperor Obama decided that importing Somalis was more important than America's missile defense system. So the allocated budget for Aegis and other cruisers to be fitted with lasers was slashed. Several ships were mothballed, others were cancelled, and housing built for Somalis so Obama could win second term. Allegedly. A lot of the time, a lot of these allocated budgets never actually materialize. And sometimes when the Pentagon says, oh, we're missing trillions, what they actually mean is that money never arrived. They have the budget for all these projects, but they're waiting for Congress to fork over the money. Now, where's the money? Well, it's always diverted, isn't it, to house migrants or health care or prop up a number of failing systems around the world. Because liberals are mentally ill. They're pathetic. They're obsessed with pleasing others because they're criminally demented, okay? They actually have a problem, and it often comes with somebody who's a bully or just say a misspent youth or just carrying a lot of guilt in general, that they want to be liked, they want to be seen as a good person, so they sympathise with anybody and everything to make others feel better. And others learn to abuse that, and you have professional victims. So, trillions of dollars have been wasted and lost. Now, yeah, Russian researchers obviously stealing technology in some cases, but in others, it's the other way around. That nobody's clean in this war, particularly the Cold War era. But Russian military analysis and many others have said for now, okay, at the current situation, Russia has the strongest ground laser in the world, and that they have the most effective battlefield laser in the world. But that's only because America still only has one deployed laser, and that's on the Gerald Ford, but they have others. Now, getting them operational, well, Lockheed is still somewhere between maybe on the power supply, because it's all so highly classified, and a lot of people have speculated that if they deploy the system beyond their enclosed containment, whether I think it's in the lab in California Colorado or Alaska, doesn't matter. Once it leaves that ecosphere, the arms race begins, because once it's the same with the German laser. When the German laser was deployed, you eventually had Russia escalate and start deploying its laser systems. But they run into unforeseen problems. And it is under continuous use, the heat expansion, even though it's very slight, remember, lasers work in nanometers, so any fraction of a change in the focus can spread a beam even a nanometer. That's enough to go from 100 watts per nanometer to 50 watts per nanometer. And you know, once you're as weak as a light bulb, you ain't going to do much damage to anything. And remember, these lasers aren't much strong. These lasers, yeah, they're delivering the power of a 100-watt light bulb, but to a tiny fraction over time, within seconds. That heat accumulates from 10 degrees. It's like 10 degrees per fraction of a second. It quickly becomes 1,000 degrees. And do you know what happens to high explosive when it's heated up rapidly? And it just kills the electronics long before the explosive goes off. It's just... So, there are actual low-power lasers, a lot of them in deployment in the battlefield, for tracking systems and all that. So, in that area, America is ahead, particularly in guided weapons, precision-guided weapons. And those are going to change the face of the war. Once the balance of power, and this is why I believe there's escalations going on, once the balance of power is achieved and there's a 6-month stalemate, the war is over. I don't think the tariffs on their own are going to be that effective. But a 6-month stalemate with Putin politically on the line is the outcome that I think Trump will achieve. Unfortunately, it will most likely become after midterms, and the GOP will probably go from a +11 down to +3 because of all the hotheads who always want to get their way every time. Trump promised the prices will come down. They didn't come down, they won. So I'm going to hurt him by voting for Democrats. You know, this is the kind of low IQ, give me attitude. Now, I blame, of course, politicians for making promises they can't keep, equally to the snide, smug, easy, cheap shots from the sidelines by low IQ people who, it's easy to be in opposition. Just point out everybody's failures and never accept responsibility for your own. Because the party's always right, comrades. But when it comes to laser weaponry, trust me, there's a lot of them out there. Most of them, however, are bullshit and weak in perspective of this war, and most of them actually exist for merely the purpose of causing heat. You may think heating up the battlefield, heating somebody up in the battlefield, giving them burns. But you ever been burnt? You know it's worse than getting shot. I haven't been shot, but I have been burnt. And I know somebody who's been both burnt and shot, and they tell me the burns are worse. So yeah, a lot of these weapons, though, are still banned, or there's also a sonic weapon and microwave weapons. There's stuff that's yet to be seen or used on the battlefield, and I think a lot of them are going to end up on the banned list. Right now, arms reduction and various talks are so stalled, and Trump's right about one thing. You can't have a three-way conversation between Russia, China, and the US anymore on arms control when you have so many countries who are sitting on the bomb and won't admit to it, or do have the bomb and won't enter into arms control. It's very hard. So plus you also have what's called strategic parity, and as the US make up a number of how many bombs they think are viable around the world, and they match that. which is why Trump upgraded the arsenal. Under Biden, he let things slip. He didn't maintain the policy of strategic parity. Because, left want to bleat about too many nuclear weapons, but won't do anything other than bleat. But, when it comes to pathetic people pleasers, all they want to hear is confirmation of their bias. They don't actually want solutions, because solutions means problems go away, and their feelings are tied to problems, not to solutions. Trust me, folks, the human brain is far more complicated than most people comprehend, and that actually there's a part of your brain that doesn't talk to you, and it sits there and plots against you. Now, I don't know why this is. You've got your edge, you've got your ego, but your subconscious, it ain't talking to you. It actually plots against you. Now, I don't know why, but you have basically a mechanism where you may make all these plans. Maybe it's common sense to just drag your ego down so you don't have a runaway ego. That's possible. But right now, particularly in the Ukraine war, we're talking in a prospective war here, we have peoples who feeling rather self-important right now. Now, this obviously is going to wear down over time, but there's going to be huge crashes and huge clashes. And eventually it's going to become more and more apparent that there are people dragging this war out, not just Zelensky, because once the war's over, there is no more importance for them. Now, another thing, I think Britain did introduce a laser weapon. It's allegedly 10 megawatt. That's yet to be seen, and they said it only cost 15 cents per shot. That turned out to be a lie. It was £15 per shot. And it ran out of gas very quickly. And, of course, 10 megawatts in the battlefield, where do you get that from? No, huge cables, man. It plugs into the power grid, which I think is why I do suspect there are laser weapons on the battlefield being used on drones. Tests going on. But there you go. That's what a power system looks like. It's huge. It's not small. And all that to power the laser. But remember, this is a huge laser to take out long-range missiles. But most are to pretty much take out surveillance systems, including drones, even satellites. But there is two, one near Moscow and one near the front line. My guess is Rostov-on-the-Don, but that's just a guess. That is an incorrect statement. All lasers perform poorly in water mist. And all lasers burn and distort their own optics. The state of the war, that's where we're at, should be clear in another 2 weeks. How if they continue with the current strategy, renew the strategy, increase the number of manpower, or just maintain where they're going. But we should see also a beginning of how they're going to respond. Not what they say, but what they do in response to Trump's tariffs and wanting to end the war. And I think it goes beyond tariffs. I think tariffs are just phase one. And we'll see what happens. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or in my profile. Also, you can scan the QR code on the screen. See you in the next video, and bye for now.